Letter 8. I have come to you again to speak of the true nature of existence. The truth of being is this. You who believe only in the material world live entirely in the earthly, finite world. You live within a dimension of the manifestations of your beliefs. Those whose spiritual perceptions and lives have been raised in frequencies of vibrations to merge with the spiritual frequencies of vibration of the spiritual dimension can perceive that they live in two dimensions. They are fully aware of this truth, and they live according to this truth and evolve into ever higher frequencies of being. They are no longer bound by human belief, but live within the realization that they live within infinity in which are no limitations. The higher their vibrational frequencies of consciousness, the more aware they are that they live within infinity, and that only they themselves set the limits on what they can aspire to. Those whose perceptions have been heightened in this way while still in their bodies have seen that there is only one dimension of actual individual being, and this dimension is divine consciousness activity. They may also come to fully realize there is a further dimension of universal consciousness in which the universal resides in perfect equilibrium and may be penetrated by none, because within this dimension any individuality would be immediately drawn into the unity of being. When a soul reaches in understanding and realization the topmost level of the frequencies of vibrations of consciousness, Christ consciousness, the soul can look down and review the levels of vibrations ascending and descending to those of humanity on earth, and know, with love and compassion, humanity is trapped in the lower vibrations of divine consciousness, hidden within the ego drive, wholly unaware of the truth of being, the soul's true identity, and the earthly truth of the ego. Neither does it have the slightest awareness of the immense purpose behind its existence and the eventual mission it must embark upon. The task of the newborn soul is to experience, through means of its sheath, the psyche, all that these lower frequencies have to offer, and grow as a result of the mental, emotional events and experiences arising out of their thoughts and feelings. The soul must learn through trial and error the state of consciousness which makes it immensely happy, or burdened with grief and sorrow, which initiate various physical limitations. The purpose of life on earth is not to discover a means to experience undeviating joy and bliss, although this is what each soul longs for. Such bliss and joy would hinder the soul's progress into the higher spiritual vibrations of consciousness. Eventually, after many lifetimes of highs and lows of comfort and sorrow, the psyche will wake up to the truth of its being and will realize that it has within itself the potential to draw on divine consciousness for insight, understanding, and knowledge, and to raise its spiritual consciousness vibrations to those of health, well-being, protection, inner growth, spiritual nutrition, and to radiate to others the nature of divine consciousness itself. As I have said before, consciousness is life, and life is consciousness. Where there is life, there is consciousness. Where there is consciousness, there is life. Everything in existence is defined by vibrational frequencies of consciousness. Light, sound, color, all physical phenomena, both living and inanimate. If you can change the frequencies of vibration of any single thing, you change the appearance of that thing, be it sound, color, gas, liquid, physical organs. When physical organs present an appearance of ill health, it is because the normal frequencies of vibrations of that physical organ have been reduced and the life within the organ has been depleted. Science presents the universe as being matter possessing consciousness, but the truth is, the universe is consciousness which has taken on the appearance of matter as a result of the descent into the lower frequencies of vibration of consciousness. This is the true reality of existence, nothing else. Your existence is all a matter of frequency of vibrations. The higher the spiritual perceptions and the adherence to spiritual thought, the more swift are the personal vibrational frequencies in the body. The vitality is raised and illness eventually disappears. The scientific fraternity believes you live entirely within the human dimension comprising the solar system and the galaxies of stars. Science believes the human intellect is the highest point of intelligent reference at any time, having evolved in response to changing environment and climatic conditions, and is purely the product of brain activity. According to science, your emotions are wholly real and valid, and what you think and feel are beyond all dispute. These constitute the only reality of existence. Normalcy is computed according to the average thoughts, actions, and responses to the environment. This is perceived as the human reality. Any talents which transcend the average output of average minds is reckoned as being genius, arising from unusual mental powers. The below-average output is said to be due to retardation, due to some physical cause, genetics, birth trauma, etc. Science believes the physical dimension is the beginning and the end of existence. Science is so set against any possibility of self-delusionary beliefs that it will accept as being real any phenomenon, provided it can be computed, estimated, and proved by instruments. If you think about this carefully, you will come to realize that what science holds fast to as fact is, in reality, only belief created by drawing conclusions through the exercise of their five senses. So is it with every other facet of your existence. In your earthly dimension, facts take place second by second, but the moment they have happened, they become memory beliefs, and memories are not always accurate. Whatever feelings and thoughts you have about the past are not facts, but points of view, beliefs, and are therefore not facts, nor the reality behind them. This applies to every facet of your existence. The truth is, you live in a worldly dimension composed entirely of your beliefs, arising from your responses to what happened 100, 1,000, or 10,000 years ago. At one time, people believed the world was flat. Therefore, for them, they lived in a flat world and were afraid to sail the seas too far in one direction because they were in danger of falling off the edge of the world. For the people, a mere 400 years ago, their world was flat. Today, with knowledge, your world is accessible in every direction. People in the past, and also in the present time, directed their lives according to old wives' tales, the power of the ancestors, and other legends. They believed in them so implicitly, the limitations imposed by these beliefs restricted people's actions and activities. Dancing was believed to be sinful and wicked by certain Christian sects. For instance, therefore, many people who would have derived great happiness and release from stress when dancing were wrongfully denied this pleasure. Religion comes under the same heading. Beliefs are the very substance of religion. They are founded on age-old happenings which are nothing but belief. The beliefs may have been relevant to the general mindset of those times, but they have long since become irrelevant in a constantly changing world. Yet they are strictly adhered to and become the focus of worship, festivities, celebration, mourning, and more destructively, they become the reason for men killing one another and causing horrific misery to women and children. Certain religions claim that God is everywhere and in all things, but also affirm dogmatically that no one knows the mind of God, or the reasons why people kill one another. It may be in God's plan, they say. With mindsets composed of a conglomeration of illogical beliefs, where can mankind at this present time find any certainty of beauty, joy, health, well-being, love? Religious ideas present a God whose will can bring life and healing, or death and destruction. In such beliefs, there is no certainty of anything other than uncertainty. With such a belief, any sickness or abnormality can be excused as being God's will. It is your beliefs which control all your expectations of what life may hand out in the future. Healthy agnosticism, the kind of mindset which accepts It does not know the nature of God, or whether there is any God at all, but is perfectly open to the conviction imparted by enlightenment is preferable to fanatical beliefs in half-truth or non-truth. How blind is the human race generally? People are like moles living within their tunnels, convinced they are capable of sizing up the entirety of their existence by using their senses of hearing, smell, very limited vision, and touch. Thus may you descend the scale of life forms and witness thousands of species living lives entirely defined and limited by their senses. What they can perceive as real constitutes their personal reality, their particular world. Every strata of existence experienced by various species of living things is distinct from every other within the earthly dimension. This includes the human mind, which is literally possessed by religious doctrines and dogmas and imprisoned in scientific theories and mathematic formulas. Religious doctrines have been conceived by human reasoning in an effort to explain the teachings of spiritual masters, whose minds have moved beyond the human sphere of intellect into the heavenly spheres of inspired perception of universal reality. Scientific concepts are also the product of the human senses rationalizing and giving names to phenomena viewed by human sight during experimentation. When, therefore, the human intellect is able to set aside such limited beliefs and ascend into contact with the reality beyond the highest human reasoning, logic, and rationalizations, which are termed knowledge, such a mind enters the higher spheres of life consciousness. It is imbued with universal truth, which is literally beyond the scope of the normal human mind to perceive or accept or understand. The human mind cannot understand any experience beyond that of the electromagnetic parameters of earthly existence and the functions of the brain until divine consciousness enlightenment enters the entire human system of mind, emotions, and subconsciousness. Then the underlying unity and harmony are revealed. When altogether new spiritual perceptions are presented to a religiously indoctrinated mind, these are perceived as being from Satan or sheer lunacy or imagination. This is natural, since when the emotions are severely aroused and challenged, as happens when deep beliefs are contradicted, the magnetic emotional bonding rejection impulses of the ego drive immediately come into action. Any thesis or proposal which causes the conditioned mind acute mental discomfort, dismay, or puzzlement will be rejected instantly, and a whole barrage of proofs will be summoned from the beliefs in the conditioned mind to back up such rejection. But the proofs are merely beliefs. This is an entirely natural mental emotional process within the purely human dimension. Therefore, if this, my truth, is offered to those whose mindsets are firmly established or conditioned by fear or strengthened by the human will to adhere to such programmed beliefs, it is only natural that the truth will arouse unruly emotions and be quite violently, perhaps virulently, rejected. The foregoing is a description of normal mental emotional activity within the human dimension. It should not be criticized, since a conditioned mind is made to feel completely insecure and adrift or all at sea when confronted with an entirely new concept. These human idioms describe exactly what happens when an indoctrinated mind is challenged by an entirely new perception of what was previously held to be so dear, so safe, so right. When first reading these letters, you can determine for yourselves where you stand mentally and emotionally. Are you blocked from spiritual progress by your stubborn adherence to present beliefs? Are you able, after due thought, to realize that all you are so sturdily upholding is only belief, irrational belief? It is absolutely vital to your spiritual development that you should, at long last, fully understand the principles of your human mind and emotional functioning. You think you do, but you do not understand it at all. You can only understand it by coming out of it entirely, transcending it, moving into higher dimensions of perception and experience, entering into truth itself. Only then do you begin to perceive that you and every other person in the world have lived and directed your lives almost entirely by human beliefs, not truth. There are many people who believe wholeheartedly that if they pray for a certain object or experience, or the bestowal of the right guidance in a certain situation, they will truly receive the right object, experience, or guidance, which will enhance their well-being. They believe that when, if, their prayer is answered, they will wholeheartedly rejoice and immediately follow the lead, irrespective of present conditions, because, coming from the divine, it can only be the right answer conducive to happiness. However, when faced with the arrival of the longed-for object or experience or guidance, the recipient of divine grace sometimes becomes so disturbed and disoriented, unable to accept that there has been an intrusion of divine consciousness exactly as asked for, that he or she does not know how to deal with it. If minds are so disturbed when what they have asked for is actually given them in an unexpected way, where is the true faith and belief which they were so certain they wholly possessed in abundance? Do you not also see that belief, not truth, has orchestrated the whole symphonic movement, with the exception, of course, of the divine consciousness intervention, the answer to the prayer? This intervention is the only reality in the whole procedure. The rest is belief and hope. Mental gymnastics using past experiences by which to measure the present. Your only truth is divine consciousness, which leads only to growth and perfection, if you fully trust it to do so. Pause here and read and reread the foregoing paragraphs, because what goes on in your consciousness is the fabric of your experiences and lives. So question yourselves. Do you really perceive, realize, understand the reality as being the source of all knowledge and creativity? Or do you merely pay lip service and superficial mental acknowledgement to divine consciousness? Do you fully and completely live, minute by minute, in the realization that universal consciousness is the only reality and highest intelligence operational within creation? Do you consistently depend on its supremely effective guidance, or do you think that you would rather live by your own finite will and sometimes muddled emotional responses? And, if you are but given direct guidance to follow a certain lead, but stop to think whether the guidance is leading you where you think you want to go, are you fully surrendered to the highest intelligent authority, divine consciousness? Is this not an indication your ego is still in control? Even these letters, when circulated as intended, will come to be beliefs, not the purely spiritual perception of what is, out of which these words have come. Only by taking these words into meditation after asking for spiritual illumination will the spiritual reality behind the words eventually come like a shaft of light into the mind. When this happens, you will know that you know. Those of you who have evolved sufficiently to live in 2 dimensions, you whose minds can move beyond the realm of human intellect into the higher dimension of universal reality, will probably encounter many people, in time to come, who will reject these letters as imagination. But be not dismayed. Remember what I am telling you now. You are residents of 2 dimensions, and none may pass beyond the dimension of mere intellect until the prerequisites to spiritual enlightenment have been fulfilled. These are a true spiritual awakening leading to deep insight into the activities of ego and selfhood, followed by remorse, remorse, remorse. This is the only way. For remorse in turn leads to the rejection of the magnetic emotional dimension of rejection bonding, which in its more virulent forms humans described as sin. When a person penetrates the spiritual dimension and is imbued with life characteristics, the person begins to realize eventually, that the human ego drive to look out for the self actually shuts the soul off from the continuous inflow of divine life into the mind, heart, body, relationships, and daily experiences. Looking out for yourself is a human, earthly experience. Total sincere surrender of the selfhood to Father Life removes the block between the spiritual dimension and the soul. A person no longer has to look out for himself. All that divine life is now flows into the individual's body, mind, heart, experiences, and relationships. Such a person lives by instinct and follows hunches which always work out perfectly in the long term. Divine life is always there to be accessed whenever the person surrenders self-will and turns to it for every need. You must remember that I am referring to the time when you penetrate the human dimension of intellect and move beyond your reliance on intellect and material means to get what you want out of life. Many people think they have reached this place of spiritual development, but are deluding themselves. When a person abandons logic and knows beyond all doubt that guidance can be utterly relied upon to achieve inspired goals, your life changes. Benefits flow into your experience when you fully realize that divine consciousness is the unseen reality, the power at work behind the outer appearances of your life, moving intelligent energy force to manifest your needs. You do not have to deny appearances pour thought power into a condition you are seeking to resolve. All you have to do is surrender self-will and know that as your limited intellect yields, so does the infinite reality move in to order your life in an altogether new way, to wean you away from all your supports of the past, bring to your mind a new vision for a new endeavor, and lead you into new areas of activity. But when this happens, you have to be prepared to let go completely. You have to release your grip on the securities of the past and know that even greater securities of a different nature await you as you follow your inspiration. Since this state of spiritual human existence and harmonious well-being depend entirely on a person's ability to make true contact with divine reality, it is imperative to return again and again to an in-depth study of divine reality itself and the way in which the ego drive is ceaselessly at work within the human consciousness, blocking out the intuitive directions of the divine life within the mind. At the moment, you are living in a shadowy, burdened existence instead of consciously living within and entering into divine consciousness and allowing it to permeate and gladden your thinking and life experiences. You remain locked within the mental-emotional framework of electromagnetic impulses until you set your willpower to consciously dissolving the fabric of your humanly conceived beliefs and come to see clearly that your reality is divine consciousness, not your family or bank book. When you achieve this insight, you will enter into light, and the light will abide in you. Because of the discomfort and the tug-of-war between the evolving soul and the human ego, which demands to look good rather than be good, and yet cannot bear the thought that it may ever be imperfect, there are few people receiving inspiration and passing it on to those at this time who will speak about the need to go through a period of inner cleansing. Modern people are conditioned to instant service, instant light, instant heat, instant food, drink, clothes, and entertainment, and therefore are not attracted to a truth which involves self-sacrifice, hard work, and total dedication to the goal. Besides which, many of these teachers are making a good deal of money out of their activities, and they must present a truth that will sell. If your modern teachers speak of a path of attainment to the highest dimensions by means of transference of personal mental illumination, it will still be necessary to undergo the inner, intense self-examination and purification of the bonding rejection of magnetic emotions. If you are truly on the upward path to the highest spiritual dimensions, your road will be characterized by moments of bright, clear-sighted self-inspection and self-realization, followed frequently by self-loathing. This dark and painful feeling is the magnetic emotion in reverse. Where before the ego clung to its essential vision of itself as being the greatest and even greater than others, it now begins to glimpse the agonizing fact that perhaps it is not only slightly, but very imperfect. Any person reaching this spiritual level of development will find that they are now traveling the road to true humility. Take heart when you find this happening to you. You are now pushing away the debris of past erroneous beliefs about yourself and your illusory selfhood. Remember that it is your intention or motivation or conviction which gives creative power to do whatever you want to do. The moment that you desire with all your heart to reverse your normal trend in your magnetic emotional patterns, you have set this process in motion. If you clearly define the goals you wish to achieve and keep them ever before your vision in writing or in mind, very shortly you will discover that the desired changes have taken place in your consciousness. When this happens, you will feel a lightness in spirit and will have moments of pure joy. You will be proving that the truth of being does bring captive hearts into perfect freedom of spiritual living. At the same time, you have to understand that your ego must, of necessity to enable you to survive, make you believe you are of value to yourself and other people. Any external serious challenge regarding the value of the self is highly destructive. A desperate fear and internal subsidence of confidence will lead to the conviction that you are without value in the world, and suicide can be the natural outcome. Therefore, your progress will and must be gradual. No one should ever expect people to be wholly changed by words of advice or times of inspiration. Growth can only take place very gradually, one insight at a time. A true spiritual insight will imbue a person's mind with an altogether new point of view which will enable him to begin to approach certain related circumstances in life differently. This insight must direct the person's actions until it has been absorbed completely into the consciousness for eternity and becomes part of the soul evolution. For instance, a man may have the idea that he will be successful in life if he enforces his will aggressively on those who come within his orbit. He believes he will be better heard if he shouts. Then he may wake up to the fact that no one likes him much, and he is avoided by employees and friends. He may become more aggressive because he now feels humiliated. Or, if he is an evolving soul, he will question what he can do about his isolation. The moment that divine life seeps into his consciousness psyche and makes him realize that he himself avoids people who shout, he will have a flash of inspiration. He will realize that, to be happy and successful, he should treat others as he likes to be treated. You may argue that this perception is not necessarily inspired, but is born of common sense, that he himself was responsible for arriving at this realization. However, this is not so. Ego thoughts are dictated solely by the bonding rejection impulses. Any new wisdom comes from loving intelligence. This may be the last inspired flash of insight he will ever have. But if he is truly on the spiritual path and seeking the highest dimensions of attainment, he will gradually perceive that this first overcoming of the ego is not enough. He will begin to see other previously unsuspected selfish patterns of behavior. He will define a further goal just out of reach at that moment, but very shortly, with prayer and meditation, he will have achieved that goal also. In this way, his consciousness frequencies of vibration will be elevated, and he will gradually move towards the celestial kingdoms of consciousness, the kingdom of heaven. Alternatively, a woman may only feel secure by not disturbing the present status quo. She is afraid to speak out when treated with a lack of respect. Such a meek person, while more comfortable taking refuge in silence, will also suffer deep resentments because people do not respect her passive personality. Such people usually turn to religion for comfort and reassurance, and because of non-comprehension of the laws of existence, she will probably remain static in her meekness till the end of her time on earth. Indeed, because of my words recorded in the Gospel, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The Church has taught that meekness is to be commended. She may feel that her meekness is the way to the light. However, if the meek little lady should find the truth concerning her being, and should find the right way to make contact with universal consciousness, she will eventually be told inwardly and clearly that, spiritually, she is the equal of everyone else. She will be inspired to express herself well. She will be given the strength to speak her truth in a more confident and attractive way. People will begin to respect this new person, and she will be manifesting the inner spiritual development gained during her times spent in meditation. Remember, you are not on earth to please God, as your church may tell you. You are on earth to express God and to make ever closer and closer contact with universal consciousness until you become free of the magnetic emotional bondage. I must make it clear that my words have been mistranslated in the Gospel. I said, "Blessed are those with peaceful hearts, for they will inherit the earth." If you contemplate the world, you will see that those countries with peaceful hearts prosper and live in harmony with their neighbors. Where there are upheavals and genocide, this turbulence is a direct manifestation of the consciousness of the inhabitants. Such a consciousness destroys a country and begets poverty and illness. Sometimes a country such as Tibet, adoring its own isolation and spiritual rituals and beliefs, may be suffocating under the weight of its own human spiritual creations. The inhabitants need to be forced out into the turbulent world that they may put their beliefs to the test. They also bring what is real in their thinking to others who are burdened with magnetic emotional responses to life. They have been the means in a small way of relieving the pain experienced in modern society. While on this journey towards light, the celestial kingdoms of divine consciousness, you will undoubtedly undergo rocky and bumpy experiences until you achieve your true goal. You will experience times of wondrous joy and times when your heart is heavy and your emotions drag this way and that, because you feel there is an impenetrable barrier between yourself and divine consciousness. You may have heard of these dark times of inner distress when a person no longer knows what he is meant to be doing or where he should be going. Then suddenly, just when the spiritual isolation is no longer bearable and the traveler has surrendered his inner self completely, light illumines the mind, and the person will see some marvelously deeper truth concerning existence, will perceive more clearly his source of being. He will be filled with joy because God has spoken. Yes, divine life has penetrated his consciousness and lifted him safely along the path leading to the attainment of the highest spiritual consciousness of the celestial kingdoms, the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, the way forward is through the means of such moments of profound revelations. They must be treasured and remembered, otherwise all the spade work of the self will be lost, and the seeker will be continually pushed back to where he began the search. Faith must be strong at all times. Dithering about avails nothing. When I descend into your planes or dimensions of consciousness, I have seen seriously inclined seekers of truth uplifted for a few hours and joyfully telling people of their experience, and then, a little while later, doubting what they were so certain they had received earlier. This slows down the process of spiritual development. These times of doubt should be strenuously resisted and overcome by meditation and prayer. For what is doubt but an undermining of what you have known and believed in? Doubt is a negative creative consciousness force directed against the very experience of divine life which lifted your spirit on high. You create within yourself a little war between your experience of divine consciousness and your human blindness. You will probably destroy the memory of that divine moment and erase all vestiges of spiritual upliftment and development it brought into your consciousness. This conflict will leave you feeling jaded and dispirited, and you will probably never realize that all alone and unassisted, you have wrought this negative transformation in yourself. People on the spiritual path frequently do this to themselves and hinder their spiritual development, never stopping to question what right they have to relapse in this self-indulgent exercise. People use their minds recklessly, blighting their lives and the lives of other people with their thoughts and words arising from their ego drive. For it is only your thought life and emotional upheavals which end in quarrels and mayhem, not your faces, bodies, hands, and legs, unless the quarrels end in physical abuse. But even bodily conflict has its origins in the frustration of the ego within mind and emotions, and conveyed to the limbs to vent the uncontrollable wrath. In this way, marriages and friendships begin in mutual joy and eventually end in misery and mutual rejection, because people find it impossible to channel their ego drive into life and love-preserving modes of self-expression. Parents and children express mutual love until the teen years, and then hatred enters the scene and sours the relationship when children rebel against authority and parents react with self-righteous abuse. Again, there is no need for such conflict. Parents must surely realize that every generation fights to find its feet in the adult world and do things more innovatively than did their elders. How can young people thrive if shackled to youthful bondage? When children become young adults, this is growing time for parents, who must now prepare for the next stage of their life, the more inspired use of their latent talents, and then old age, acceptance of their past follies and mistakes, and at last, a peaceful transition into eternal light. Why quarrel? Why fight? People wholly controlled by ego let fly and hammer away for their rights. Spiritually mature people solve problems by discussing them empathetically. What does this mean in human terms? It means listening to the other person with the spoken or silent acknowledgement that the way the other person felt or feels in a certain situation is as valid and worthy of respect as were and are your feelings. When overtaken by a serious confrontation in which neither of you are prepared to yield an iota of ground, go away on your own and take time to realize that what you are engaged in is a battle of consciousness. The battle is not enjoined only as a result of what was actually done and said in a moment of extreme heat. What really took place was the upshot of what you both are in consciousness. This involves your backgrounds. The conflict springs from the personality itself, the type of ego drive a person possesses, the basic perceptions of right and wrong, the normal attitudes each have towards other people and life generally. Therefore, when you have a conflict or confrontation, tell your opponent that you are taking time off to stand still and quiet your mind to be able to listen more helpfully. Then, be very wise. Call on divine consciousness for an intervention of loving consciousness into the situation. Try to realize and visualize that both of you stand in the light of divine consciousness, equal in soul origins, equal in destiny, equally real, equally human, equally unique. Until you can fully immerse yourself in this realization, this state of mind, you are not yet ready to stand in the divine light to lovingly sort out your conflict and hurt feelings. Return to your opponent and suggest you should meet and each have 5 or 10 full minutes in which to clearly, quietly explain your point of view, your perception of what was actually said, what the fight is really about, how feelings were hurt, how the matter should be resolved. Choose to let the other speak first and again surrender the situation to divine consciousness. If there is a great deal of bitter accusation taking place, try to subdue your own ego and remain absolutely silent and calm. This will be a great help to the other speaker, since he will feel he is being heard. It will obviate the feeling of frustration. Rationally, realize you are helping your opponent, but do not puff yourself up for being superior. Try your best to see how much of what is being said is true about yourself. Whatever it may be, if valid, bite your tongue and accept it. Be glad and rejoice because in that moment you have had a moment of insight into your own human consciousness, giving you an opportunity to get rid of a facet of ego drive. Every time you are able to rid yourself of a little ego drive, you allow your soul more breathing space and room for more active control of your personality. You also rise in consciousness frequencies of vibration and feel a degree lighter within yourself. By these means, you grow psychologically and spiritually. Listen to the feelings of the other person. Try to restrain your own and empathize with your sparring partner's emotions. Feel his hurt, his indignation, his anxieties. Put aside your own and feel his. Note, his represents both genders for brevity. Ask yourself, if someone has said or done to you what you have said or done to the other, how would you feel? If you can set aside your ego sufficiently to be able to consider this, then you are on your way to overcoming the kind of ego drive which puts self above every other consideration and is unable to see any other point of view. Before speaking, calmly wait in silence until your sparring partner's 10 minutes are fully up, even if it means he finishes before time and both of you remain in silence for a while. Acknowledge as pleasantly as you are able that you have heard what he has said, and you can understand why he is upset. In that instant of self-control, realize that you have gained a modicum of control over yourself, and you have taken the first step to healing the situation. On the other hand, if you have not truly understand what he has told you, then you are mentally blocking something he is saying which you do not want to hear or receive. Therefore, again, your ego is in control. Control it and invite him to explain further, and again do your best to put yourself in his place. Feel his pain, understand his anger. When you have received the other person into your understanding and acknowledged it, his ego defenses will begin to lessen. You will see him begin to relax. Both of you will feel better. Having done this quietly, slowly, carefully, you then give an equally clear picture of the way that you felt in the circumstances. Do not use words calculated to set your opponent down and thus upset him. Remember that you are making an effort to control your ego as a prelude to unconditional love. You are working to achieve peace and understanding between you, not points. Your reply should not lead to further conflict because you have used words likely to further upset him. If it does, then your ego has won the round against you. Your psyche has lost. If you are both living in the spiritual frequencies of consciousness, it will follow that your opponent will accord you the same response of listening, thinking, and acknowledging your position as you gave him. But if he lives entirely in the earthly consciousness frequencies, you may encounter difficulties. He may feel you are trying to score points by being holy, superior, or bigger in some way. Calm him down. Tell him it is painful to have conflict between you. You are only trying out a method to ensure both of you get a fair hearing from the other and reach a truly mutual forgiving reconciliation instead of a superficial one when hurt feelings are left to fester in the mind and heart and body. You should each give the other the right to disagree in gentle words, giving valid reasons for the disagreement. Find the fortitude within yourself to recognize that you, as a human being, cannot possibly be always right, since you, like everybody else, has been born with a controlling ego drive which forces you to take up and strongly defend the position of top dog. Remember that while you believe yourself to be top dog, he too believes the same thing. Humanly, he believes himself to be at least on an equal level with yourself, if not superior. Whatever his ego causes him to think about himself and his point of view is exactly the same as your ego causes you to think about your opinions and ideas. When you can bring divine consciousness into the arena of your human consciousness, you have literally received, with compassionate acceptance and love, the human reality of each of you into yourselves, have dissolved the negativity between you, and raise the frequencies of your consciousness vibrations, leaving you feeling lighter and more vibrant. Since this leaves you in a perfect peace, no longer in conflict, this is extremely important to your well-being. If, however, you should refuse to listen and empathize and accept with loving forgiveness the truth of another person, the rejection creates an emotional magnetic rejection energy which joins and reinforces other residues of rejection energy force within the consciousness electromagnetic fields of your entire system. Rejection magnetism depletes the bonding magnetism between cells, and ill health sets in. This fact of existence is the ground of all psychosomatic medicine. People who constantly blame and judge others and keep a wholly closed mind in regard to their own part in conflict eventually experience some kind of radical breakdown in their physical or emotional makeup. If they can monitor and work on this tendency to exercise control, judge others, and exonerate themselves from blame, and can eventually give their soul full mastery in their personality, the breakdown of whatever kind it is will ultimately disappear completely. If during conflict with another you give time, space, and understanding, but only encounter stubborn resistance in the form of a continual statement of personal aggrieved feeling, then you are dealing with ego blindness, and the only thing to do is laugh, concede defeat, and walk away. Providing you walk away with forgiveness and understanding of their controlling ego, you may have conceded defeat, but you gained a victory over self, and refrain from introducing negative vibrations into your consciousness field. The very worst thing you can do to promote discord is to tell a person they shouldn't feel a certain way, or they do not mean what they are saying. These two sayings are a gross violation of the dignity and respect due to the other, and you have rejected the human reality of the other person. You may question a person, do you really mean what you're saying? If the answer is yes, then it must be accepted, and the discussion should continue from that point. Never ignore what another person is trying to tell you because you do not want to face up to what is being said. This is cowardice and gives points to your ego. Be brave and listen, with both ears open to receive the truth behind the words. You must accept the reality of a person, whether you agree with it or not, even if a facet causes you shock or displeasure. Remember, you do not know the full circumstances out of which that human consciousness has grown into its present form. If you judge, criticize, condemn in any way, you have erected a barrier between yourself and that person, which will not be removed no matter how much you may wish to overlook everything negative in him and become friends in the future. Unknowingly, what you reject in him will remain in your consciousness as a foundation for future discords, which will build up and eventually outweigh the affection. Unwittingly, you will say things in the future reflecting your underlying secret mistrust or displeasure. Instead of accepting his weaknesses with love and helping him deal with and overcome them, you will put him on his guard against you, and he will never fully trust you. Your ego and his ego will have had a secret battle which neither of you will be aware of consciously. Love could turn to hate. Remember, your life is a state of consciousness in which thoughts and feelings are deposited, as in a safety box. Let acceptance and caring be the steel of which the box is made. When you have an encounter with someone to whom you are drawn, if only in friendship, you discover that there are elements in his past which are contrary to your principles. You have the option to remain in contact with him, fully accepting his past, and possibly in future situations, pointing out the characteristic logically and lovingly, helping him grow, or, if this is impossible, promptly removing yourself from the situation until you can see his problems from the perspective of loving acceptance inspired by divine consciousness, and you find him receptive to your principles. You must never accuse a person of acting out of an ego impulse. All human beings are ego-driven to a greater or lesser extent. Never take a stance which will humiliate another. When I was on earth, I urged people to forgive and to abstain from judgment, criticism, condemnation. The Church has misinterpreted this meaning as you must please God by loving others and abstaining from negative emotions. This is not what I meant at all. There is no God who needs to be pleased by your behavior. You are masters of your fate in that you always reap what you sow. All the foregoing pages have been directed at giving you details of how to avoid sowing weeds in your vegetable patch, how to remain healthy, happy, prosperous. A time will come in your spiritual development when you will awaken to the enormous gift you have in your head, the gift of creative, intelligent thinking, and you will also become aware of the enormous responsibility you bear towards the way you use it. There are wonderful people in your world who have used their minds in such a way as to gain insight and growth from the daily challenges in their lives. Step by step, by probing, analyzing, moving on to new viewpoints, higher understanding, they fashion new ideals for themselves. They adopt these ideals as guidelines for their future behavior. By these means, they are able to purify their thinking, words, actions, in order to redefine their mode of conduct in the world and of attending to relationships. These are self-made people, but rarely do you find that they have not also drawn strength, insight, inspiration, emotional stability from the higher source, divine consciousness, or their perception of what they may call God. When on earth, I told the people a story, the parable of the 10 talents. I said that a lord of much wealth was going abroad for a while, and he left each of his 3 servants a sum of money. To one he gave 10 talents, to another 5, and to the last one he gave 1 talent. When he returned, he asked each servant what use they had made of the money. One said he had doubled the master's investment, and the other said he had gained half again, and the last man said he had sat on it, fearing to lose what he had been given. The master complimented the first 2 servants on their efficiency and ingenuity, but he was angry with the servant who had not attempted to make anything at all of the 1 talent left in his care. Each of you in the world have your own amount of talent with which to work. If on your own initiative you find it hard to discover the best way to make a profit out of your personal talent and resources, draw on divine consciousness through meditation, and little by little the ideas will surely come, and these will be exactly suited to your own personality. At the same time, consider how you have used your talents throughout your lifetime. Have you been engrossed entirely in creating happiness and pleasures for yourself, or have you devoted time also to the upliftment or improvement of the life of others? It is a terrible thing to have been given talents above the average, and to end your lives having squandered them in self-indulgent modes of living. Whatever lessons you have failed to learn, whatever growth you have evaded, whatever development in spirituality you have deliberately avoided, are mountains you have created for yourself to climb in your next lives. They will obstruct your path and will have to be dealt with spiritually or again repeated in the further life. It is not necessary to make a great way in the world, achieve advancement or wealth or fame. You can use your talents as a parent, seeking the best means of becoming successful in your job of promoting your children's well-being. What higher calling is there than to be a good, loving parent, more especially if you take as your role model the divine Father-Mother consciousness, which is entirely directed at growth, nutrition of mind and body, healing of mind and body, regeneration of mind and body, protection in every form, and the fulfillment of every need of mind, emotions, body, within a system of law and order and unconditional love. As a parent, have you measured up to the consciousness of your divine source of being? Some of the people who have made the best use of their talents have been servants, those who have looked after other people's children with devotion and love, cleaning the house with conscientious attention to detail, creating a peaceful, calm, and caring environment for the employer with love and gentleness. These are the great souls, the ones who have made paths for themselves, leading directly into the kingdom of heaven. Alternatively, there are people who have used their talents for the purposes of destruction of others, to feed their vanity and the cold emptiness within their own hearts. Ultimately, their use of their minds has led to their own destruction. Think of the people in history and in present time who have brainwashed others into rebellion. They have become dictators. Then think about the likely end of such dictators. Such people have abused the privileges bestowed by mind power, and they eventually pay the price. But not before they have ruined thousands of lives for no good reason, for there could never be a good reason for turning countries into war-torn wildernesses and ruining a prosperous economy. Think of families where emotional and mental abuse is rife. This is an abhorrent use of mental power. It rebounds to the abuser in many, many ways: ill health, sickness, addictions, depression, and loss of self-esteem. However, do not use your brain's intellect, insight, knowledge, education as a platform from which to criticize, judge, or condemn others who do not measure up to your own standards of efficiency or goodness in any area of your life. At the same time, since to criticize, judge, and condemn is as natural as breathing to the human ego, do not attempt to deny your perceptions of what might be improved. To do so is to deny the reality of the evolutionary process. The purpose behind existence is to experience and improve upon your experiences. Therefore, do not judge or condemn or reject the deficiencies you observe in others, but take your perceptions immediately to divine consciousness and continually ask for a divine resolution of the problem. Hold fast to the realization that wherever, whenever, divine consciousness is drawn into a problem, the end result is always growth and development for all concerned. Try to bear in mind always, you are on earth to bring divine consciousness down into your daily life, relationships, and circumstances. You are there to use your minds for this special purpose. When I said I have come to help you find life more abundant, I meant that I have come to help you work through your magnetic emotional bondage and to find and make true contact with divine life, the source of your being. Out of this contact comes increased life, which far transcends the physical life you draw from your food alone. Out of this contact comes spiritual direction, protection, and a divinely inspired path. You could call this the path of Christ consciousness. When you have perceived some deeper truth previously hidden from your consciousness, you must accept and rejoice that divine consciousness has penetrated your human consciousness and spoken within your mind. Give sincere thanks and treasure this gift and reverence it. Never take it for granted, otherwise you will block further entrance of loving intelligence. You will wonder why you feel so alone again. People speak of being transformed by the inner spirit. The terminology of inner spirit is not wrong. I have gone to great lengths to try to rid your minds of old terminology which may have an inaccurate meaning for you. At the same time, I want you to understand that once you have grasped what I really mean, for I have been so grossly misinterpreted in the past that I do not want this to happen again. You must not be bound down by the terminology itself. So long as you know what the inner spirit really is, divine life consciousness operating out of infinite universal consciousness, and has nothing to do with the spirits of the departed, you may use the terminology which has most meaning for you, provided it is the meaning given you in these letters. To return to my original statement at the beginning of this new section, it is frequently said that people can be transformed by the power of the Spirit. Such a transformation is not possible. There is nothing real in your human self which can be transformed. Your soul has been drawn from divine life consciousness and is therefore perfect. Your human personality is ephemeral and composed only of magnetic emotional bonding rejection impulses. Consequently, divine life must gradually impregnate more and more of your consciousness to impel you to strip away these gross impulses in order to reveal the spiritual reality. Perhaps I can best explain this to you by using a parable. A girl of great beauty was kept hidden within the heavy gray veiling, and an ugly face was painted on it. Thus the truth of her being was kept secret, and few ventured near her because of her unattractive appearance. She grew up and realized that the cause of her loneliness and misery, loss of freedom of movement and health, were due to the veils. But she was so accustomed to them that she felt she would not survive without them. However, she was fortunate enough to meet an enlightened mentor from another country, and was ultimately persuaded to discard just one veil. After much searching for the inner strength to do so, she begged her mentor to help her. He lifted her hands, and together they discarded the veil on which the ugly face had been painted, and she felt much better for having rid herself of it. She began to feel a sense of joy. After a while, she was eager to rid herself of another veil, and again her mentor came to her and helped to remove it, and so it continued. The more she shed, the more lighter she grew, and she gradually glimpsed the reality of nature around her. She could see the trees clearly, the birds on the boughs, and listened enthralled to their beautiful songs. She saw the beauty in other people's faces and began to feel the flow of love in her heart. Life was now becoming a truly divine gift to be treasured. Daily she gave thanks to her mentor for helping her to become such a happy person. Finally, the time came when she could no longer bear the final veil around her. She knew it was shutting her off from even greater light, beauty, harmony, and loving contact with other beautiful people. Although she did not know how she would manage without it, she retired into the silence with her mentor and pleaded to have this last veil removed. This was a time of agony, since the veil appeared to be a part of her being, but she begged and pleaded, and in a moment of brilliant light, the veil was burned off her. The form that was left was her reality, and she came into perfect inner freedom. However, her individualized reality now had to find a way to function in the environment. This was unexpectedly difficult. Because her perceptions of reality surrounding and within herself were now so clear and transcendent, the ground of her communication with other people had radically changed. She was no longer at peace in the social and business environment, nor could she remain a member of her community. People looked at her and said, "Oh, this is who you are, and you have no veil? How dreadful! We find you very odd and even a little mad." They turned their backs on her. What do you think she did? Did she long to go back to the time when she was veiled as heavily as others? No. She had found such peace, joy, and fulfillment of need, she left her community and went into a retreat and joined other souls who would recognize her true identity and respond to it with love and joy. Tell me, was her veil, her personality, transformed? No. With the help of her mentor, she removed her own veiling when she was convinced by her mentor, Divine Life Consciousness, it was the right thing to do. As she removed the different layers of veiling, she came closer and closer to intimate knowledge of the reality soul, hidden by her veiling, the personality. You can probably understand now that the human personality is like a mental emotional cobweb, sometimes a dirty veiling of mass interactions between magnetic attraction bonding and magnetic repulsion-revulsion. Spiritually evolved people can see this dirty veiling clouding the skin of people whose language is coarse and their thoughts solely centered around earthy ego activities. Alternatively, as an individual leaves behind levels of earthy thoughts and responses, the skin begins to clear and a light shines in the eyes. While the earth personality is imperceptibly dying away, the body becomes more spiritualized. This is clearly visible to people who have the gift of spiritual perception. Do not be afraid of future withdrawal from the earthly mindset. You will relinquish it little by little with infinite relief. Your true goal in life will become ever more clear, and your determination to reach it will grow ever more strong. You may argue that you are not often mentally or emotionally engaged in magnetic emotional thoughts and feelings. But when you examine your spontaneous thoughts, you will find you are completely dominated by magnetic attraction, bonding, and magnetic repulsion, revulsion thoughts all day long. Your mind keeps up a ceaseless chatter of comments and judgments, criticisms, wants, don't wants, reactionary feelings verging on resentment or rejection, longing for certain things and fears that the longings will not be fulfilled, striving for success, and irritation or anger with those who stand in the way of that success. When the ego is in control, the one who prays does so with faith and yearning. Immediately after prayer, on meeting someone, the trauma just taken to God to be dealt with in the right way is sorrowfully aired to gain the comfort of human sympathy. But the consciousness form and force released during prayer, the asking, the faith, and the yearning are now cancelled by the self-pity. The mind is usually a bog, a quagmire of conflicting ideas. During stress, a person may strive to focus on a life-giving affirmation or perception, but, like a playful puppy tossing a paper bag filled with air, the thought is soon swept out of mind, and the stressful thinking the person was trying to avoid has once again taken hold. And so it goes on in the mind back and forth until the person longs to escape the conflict. Your internal dialogue will probably go along lines similar to, I don't want to get up. I don't want to get breakfast. I don't want to make sandwiches. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to meet so-and-so today. I don't want to do the laundry. I don't want to do this, that, and the other. And so the litany of rejection of life continues with thoroughly disgruntled people all day long. However, instead of mentally complaining, the dialogue may be along the lines of, I don't feel like. All these feelings come from ego drives which reject such activities since they are perceived to be a bore, uncomfortable, or a burden. Alternatively, you may wake up and say or feel, it's Saturday. I must hurry and dress and get to the market. There are things I want to buy. I must get some of those strawberries before they are sold out. I must get down to the sales to find some bargains. I'm going to speak nicely to my husband to give me some money. I do hope I see Patrick when I go to his office. I want that new boss to like me, so I'll work extra hard and I'll look attractive for him. I hope my husband buys the new car. I'm certain I'll find a parking space if I remain positive. I hope I get a bonus. All these foregoing ideas come from the ego-bonding impulses. I want. You may also string together several bonding and rejection feelings. I hope my children go to sleep early so that I can relax. I hate it when they call for water and want me to read to them when I'm so tired. But I ought to be a good mother and spend a little time with them. I hope that I can. I ought, good mother, spend time, are all connected by the magnetic attraction bonding. These are the things you want for yourself. These thoughts arise from fears of being asked to do more than you feel you can do at this moment. Fears of failure as a mother. Fear is a direct impulse experienced from the ego, which demands that you measure up in order to be acceptable to yourself and other people, and yet it is very much aware that you do not. With the development of civilization, the magnetic bonding rejection impulses have become so complicated and interwoven that they are difficult to differentiate and discern. I hate it, call for water, want me to read, I'm so tired, are all magnetic rejection revulsion feelings, and since it requires more energy to reject and push away than to accept and bond with, the conflict within you will end up by making you feel even more dispirited and tired, even feeling guilty, but unable to find the strength to do what you would really, deep down, like to do, spend more time with your children, read to them, and mother them. This would give you a sense of satisfaction and well-being because, at an even deeper level, you know you would be experiencing and expressing love, whereas all the wants and don't wants are a coating hiding the feeling of love. When you are in tune with your deepest recesses of being and are experiencing and expressing love, you are truly at peace and happy. At the same time, notice that this interior monologue which goes on all the time in caring mothers, the little interjection of, "I ought to spend a little time with them," is an insight drawn directly from divine life consciousness, but you will probably believe it is your conscience telling you what you ought to do. Perhaps you are beginning to see that your mind and emotions are like a war arena with conflicting ideas following each other so rapidly that you are completely unaware of what you are doing to yourself. Your mind is a seesaw. Your beliefs, opinions, reactions change according to any changes you find in relationships and environment. A seesaw of likes and dislikes, resentment and friendship, possessiveness and rejection. All this hubbub arises out of superficial understanding of all that is really taking place in your environment at the subterranean level. You are like boats sailing the seas. You can see the sky, but you have no inkling at all of the growth, movement, and life activity taking place under your keel. This means that you may think you are relating to someone in a real way, but underneath the surface and behind their pleasant exterior, your friend may feel lonely in your presence and aching to be understood and spoken to on a level more sensitive and empathetic, more suited to their needs as well as yours. Take, for instance, the following example. On the face of it, it appears to be completely harmless, both to yourself and other people. But an analysis will show you it is anything but innocuous. I hope that bad-tempered woman is away from work today. First, to be able to make such a statement, in your hidden consciousness, you have reviewed her behavior and condemned her for the problems she causes by her bad temper. You have hung a label around her neck, bad-tempered woman. You have created a consciousness energy force with her name on it. It won't do her any good. You want magnetically, not spiritually, that she should be absent from work to make life more pleasant for you. In the above statement, you reveal you are in the grip of ego completely, since you did not pause to wonder whether she was subject to any problem of character personality, any hidden sickness, misery, financial problem, causing her to be short-tempered. The hope she will be absent is in the nature of a curse on her. If your thinking was sufficiently passionate and powerful, she will probably pick up the negative consciousness energy force and suddenly feel too unwell to go to work. The same principle is involved in the development of emotional tension into nervous breakdowns. At the onset of emotional tension, the mind and emotions begin to race with magnetic emotional rejection, repulsion, revulsion feelings. A person engages in continual thoughts such as "I can't cope," which is a rejection and outright denial of any existing energy that the person does have to deal with the crisis. "I can't bear it" also denies personal strength. "I hate this happening to me." "I hate the person doing this to me." "I hate having to change my lifestyle." "I hate," "I deny," "I refuse," "I object," "I oppose," "I don't deserve." A particularly virulent consciousness form, thoughts, "I'll get my own back," is a mixture of magnetic bonding rejection. In reality, the consciousness of such a sentence is, "I hate him and what he has done so much that I will teach him a lesson. I will do to him exactly what he has done to me. I'll make him pay." This is pure revenge. Revenge is a boomerang which magnetically returns, bestowing suffering of some kind on the thinker. If he is on the path to Christ consciousness, it will also teach the sender a much-needed lesson. All these foregoing thoughts and feelings, including the killer resentment, bring on nervous, even physical breakdowns. There may be some people reading these letters who will remember my confrontation with the fig tree near Bethany. I was hungry and foolishly looked for figs when they were out of season. When I found none, I said to the tree, "May no one ever eat of your fruit again." And the tree withered to its roots and was dead by the following morning, much to the astonishment of Peter. This was a time when I, as Jesus, was thoroughly irresponsible in the use of my mind power, and caused damage for which I was contrite. I explained the true reasons for this incident fully in Letter 3. However, when speaking to my disciples, I also used it as an example and warning of the power exercised by mind over living things. Let it be said also that on that day I whipped and drove the moneylenders out of the temple and harshly denigrated the scribes and Pharisees to their faces. All these activities were magnetic emotional bonding rejection impulses. Deliberately, I set the seal on my soon-to-be death by crucifixion. I knew exactly what I was doing, for my time on earth was drawing to a close, and to tell the truth, I was eager to leave your world. When people first come onto the spiritual path and seek a higher power, many are taught by self-help teachers to engage in magnetic emotional bonding thoughts to a greater degree, although such teachers have no idea that their instructions are serving to strengthen the power of the ego. The spiritual aspirant is taught, if you meditate, God or the power of my subconscious will help me get all my needs. I'm going to visualize the house I want, and I know I'll get it. I am going to buy the clothes I need and have faith that I'll somehow find the installments. They concentrate on having faith and on getting what they need or want. At the beginning of their change in consciousness and the exercise of their faith, they do indeed feel great benefits. The desired objects do come into their lives. They find doors opening. They achieve success. This phenomena reveals that the material planes of their consciousness are becoming more spiritualized, and as a result, there are improvements in them. Life is less hard. But your lives are meant to express every level of your consciousness, mind, emotions, body. When you have mastered the physical realms of consciousness, your next adventure into spirituality is in the realm of your emotions. Therefore, suddenly in the midst of your plenty, the winds blow and the rains fall upon your previously stable emotional consciousness, creating manifold miseries of every kind. These can be in the nature of loss of family, health, or possessions, sudden setbacks of numerous kinds in numerous areas of your life. It is at these times that so many lose their previous faith. Positive thinking doesn't work, they affirm. No, positive thinking on its own does not work. Neither does the power of your subconscious, since it is only a facet of your entire spiritual human being. When your emotions are in upheaval, you are being called to examine your entire consciousness, your beliefs, your feelings toward yourselves and others, your faith in a spiritual dimension, even the meaning of death and your life afterwards in a higher dimension. This is an extremely painful time in the lives of people. All are subject to this time of upheaval in one form or another. It can be a time of tremendous inner growth and a movement into happiness, or an ongoing time of bitterness and resentment. This is the time to wake up and fully realize that the outcome of the experiences are entirely up to you, not fate or destiny, but you, either working on your own or devotedly and consistently with divine consciousness, arriving eventually at the height of felicity. It is at this time also that a person is challenged to use the mind constructively, reaching for the highest insights and ideals with which to master the emotions. The difference between reactive thought, arising from impulsive ego responses to uncomfortable situations, and creative, intelligent, thoughtful thought will become clear. When this takes place, and the insight is put into daily practice, self-mastery is close at hand. Only the teachers who can lead you through all the levels of self-realization, remorse, awakening, changing mental emotional patterns, moving ever upward into higher spiritual frequencies of vibration until reaching true God realization, are the teachers of truth, who can truly lead you into the kingdom of heaven. If the first level of development, seeking material satisfactions through positive thinking, were wholly satisfactory to seekers and brought them all they hoped for, the whole world would by now have been converted to the belief in positive thinking. However, this is the starting point of the previously quiescent soul's spiritual journey and is not to be rejected or criticized. The psyche wakes up to the fact that beyond the earthly dimension, there is some spiritual dimension called God, a person sitting up there, or a universal power which answers prayers. Remember, we are talking about consciousness. The psyche is becoming aware that there is more to life than the daily grind and wants to experience whatever it is, because deprivation in some area of existence, health, financial means, happiness, love, etc., is causing it to seek help. Here we have the same magnetic emotional bonding at work, I want. However, as the awakening psyche becomes an observer of what is going on in the mind and emotions through its filtered contact with light consciousness, it will begin to see some of the magnetic emotional bonding rejection activities it is engaging in. Eventually, it will be sufficiently enlightened to turn from the possessive repulsion feelings and will pray for help to overcome them. It is usually at this time that the right teacher for that soul will come into his life. If the soul has traveled the road of life several times, then it will be some teacher who has evolved sufficiently to lead the seeking soul out of the chains and bondage of the ego drive and forward into light. Remember, in your approach to others, be careful of their egos. It is their sole means of internal survival until they have gained a real and lasting glimpse of divine consciousness, and they also perceive that they have within, and transcendent to themselves, a source of strength, power, and inspiration. You must also realize that in becoming individualized into bodily form and mental-emotional activity, you are subject to the laws of existence. You have been given individuality and identity and infinite potential of achieving Christ consciousness, and there is a price to pay for these. For perhaps many lifetimes, until you are educated into this rare knowledge of self, you will experience the vagaries and multitudinous complexities of life and relationships. In many lives in the past, you may have done outrageous things considered by others to be sin personified. But these magnetic personality experiences will have contributed to bringing you where you are today in spiritual perception. Therefore, you should be able to accept that there is no sin against a God. There is no sin against others. The ego can only have total control and do reprehensible things because the soul is still asleep within the heavy cobweb bondage of the magnetic personality. Where this is the case, there is no possibility of persuading such a person he has done wrong against others. There is no interior illumination from light to show him a better way to live. It is entirely blocked by the ego magnetic consciousness. However, the pain such a person experiences, since everything he does to others will return with full measure and more, will ultimately make him question existence, and asking questions is the means by which to receive answers from divine life. I began this section by saying that people believe they can be transformed by spirit. Now you understand why I said there is nothing to be transformed. There is nothing real or eternal in the personality. There is a great need to strip it away to reveal the divine within. In Palestine, I call this process a dying to self, which has proved to be a frightening statement. Because of it, many people have been deterred from stepping onto the path leading to the highest spiritual dimensions. And yes, that last step in the stripping process is indeed like a death. A person loses an essential part of his human earthly self while undergoing it. But the relief and the inner peace experienced when the struggle is finally over cannot be described. Joy fills the heart. There is true security, rest, and tranquility in the silence of the mind. At last, the struggle for personal control is over. The person becomes a master. There follows a time of spiritual rest and recuperation. This is later followed by a stepping into a new dimension of being. Nothing in the human scene matters as it did before. People criticize you? Previously, the magnetic personality would have made you feel angry because of your insecurity, your driving need to appear perfect to everyone in order to gain approval. If you do not have approval, the ego argued, how will you survive? What will your life be like? When the voice of the ego has died away, there is no need to seek security, for you are secure. You know that you are sustained, maintained, nourished, protected, healed by divine life consciousness, no matter what others may think of you. Your joy, gladness, happiness, personal fulfillment, and contentment are all inside you. In fact, you no longer need otherness at all. Except you are a part of all otherness, and when the light fills you, you have a driving need to render to others all that divine life consciousness is pouring into you every moment of the day as you keep in constant touch with this beautiful dimension within you. No longer do you reject the personality of others. Everyone is acceptable to you. Everyone is in need of love, and now you have plenty of that to give. No longer is it a struggle to love unconditionally. It comes spontaneously. Whatever faults you may have left, whatever mistakes you make in your attitudes towards others, as results of remnants of the ego left behind, these are revealed to you, but you do not shy away from self-knowledge, but rather embrace it with love and thanksgiving. You discover that recognition and acceptance of the negative human reactions in yourself is both wholesome and healing. You happily accept and take responsibility for whatever mistakes you make, and then when you have discerned the loving way, you let it go. You will experience inner peace, knowing that you have learned something else valuable, which will stand you in good stead when you next are challenged by earthly experiences. The time for deep remorse is over, since it has now done its work of releasing you from magnetic emotional responses to life, which brought you suffering in the past. You have now entered what I termed Kingdom of Heaven when I was on earth. You will find that all your needs are supplied, and you will know that any needs in the future will also be met almost spontaneously. This knowledge keeps you in constant touch with divine life and gives you an immense sense of security. With a peace of mind and tranquility come joy and happiness and a new sense of youthful well-being. Minor or chronic or even terminal illnesses will be cleared up, and you will again enter into a new phase of existence. Each time you learn a lesson, you leave something of the human dimension behind you and move forward into a higher frequency of spiritual consciousness. I am describing for you the rewards which await you when you have struggled and dealt with the magnetic emotional bondage of attraction bonding, rejection repulsion. It is these which initially give you individuality, but which become fetters of the soul, and from which you must break free in order to get off the treadmill. This treadmill is the span of your present human life, continually turning, continually bearing you into experiences you do not enjoy. When at last you are able to transcend in spirit your magnetic emotional reactions to life, the treadmill will begin to slow down, and then suddenly you will find that you are almost stationary, and you will begin to experience the beautiful quality of life I have described above. Would that I could remove this burden imposed on you by your earthly humanhood. I know your suffering, your times of despair, your grief in the lonely night, your hours of mental and emotional turmoil. As I descend into your consciousness frequencies to transmit my messages to you, and to understand what needs to be said to you, I become aware of your earthly conditions, and these words are my response to your most urgent needs for relief and healing. Do not doubt these words are from me. Take comfort from them, and know that as you study these words, they will in time bring you deep illumination within your soul, which will bring about the longed-for changes in your life and self. How to meditate. When you meditate, take up the position which is most comfortable for you. You do not have to go into physical contortions. Rest and relax. Tell yourself to relax and release all your limbs, including your head, neck, face, into a state of utter limpness. I must impress on you that meditation should be, eventually, as simple as slipping into slumber. The purpose of meditation is to enable your entire consciousness to move beyond the boundaries of intellect and reason. There are teachers who will tell you to imagine whatever you are told to imagine. You can rest assured you are not being assisted to go anywhere except into new imaginative realms of your own thought processes. What this method of meditating will achieve for you will be relief from the thoughts and stress that your ego pressures are creating for you. In the world of imagination, the ego may or may not be dormant. Before commencing meditation, prepare by fully realizing you are about to make contact with divine consciousness, both within and transcendent to your consciousness. Therefore, it is also out there and around you. Visualize exactly what this means. Remember, at all times, that what you think about is what you are tuning into. Your thoughts are searchlights making contact with what you seek. Remember that every thought has its own frequency of vibrations in consciousness. Believe, know this, for this is true. The more spiritual the thought, the higher the frequencies of vibration. Consciousness forms embodied by words are not visible, but are specific entities of being. They have the life of consciousness within them. They are magnetized to like consciousness forms. Like is drawn to like. Think dog and visualize what you mean, and your thoughts are attuned to the dog species. Think universal consciousness or divine life with understanding of what you mean, and your thoughts will be directed into universal consciousness, divine life. If you have fully understood all that I am trying to tell you, you will know that your meditation reaches its target. Know this and you will find your faith strengthening. Your faith remains weak because you only hope or wish or magnetically want to tune into life consciousness because you hope you will derive some benefit from the exercise. Do you not see how earthy is such an approach to that which gave you being? Is it reverent? Does it befit a person who is seeking true contact and expects to do so? While infinite universal consciousness is not the mythical God on high as depicted in the Old Testament, it is the infinitely powerful reality everywhere present, manifesting its own designing, intelligent, evolutionary, loving caring for all that it has brought into being. This is what you must realize you will eventually approach while you are still on Earth, when you reach the highest dimensions after your magnetic emotions have been dissolved, not only from your mind, but also your subconscious and solar plexus. First of all, you will be getting in touch with Father, Mother, Divine Life, which is ever active within your entire system and the universe. Remember, it is in equilibrium within the infinite universal dimension and active within the world. Father activity sets the goals. Mother love directs the ways the plans will be developed to promote the highest good of that which is being adapted or healed or protected. Countless people will say that these statements above are all imagination. They can scoff as they will. Those who manage to make contact with Father-Mother Life Consciousness, another name for Divine Life Consciousness, but denoting its double qualities, will verify that the foregoing is an accurate description of spiritual evolution which follows such contact. To return to your meditation, first of all, before attempting to enter your meditative state, memorize the following prayer so that the words become your own. When you have become perfectly relaxed, start your meditation with this prayer. Say it slowly and visualize the meaning of each word to enable you to enter into the consciousness of the word and enable the energy consciousness of the word to enter into your deepest self. As you say this prayer, your eyes should be closed and your gaze lifted towards your forehead. Father, Mother Life, you are my life, my constant support, my health, my protection, my perfect fulfillment of every need, and my highest inspiration. I ask you to reveal the true reality of yourself to me. I know it is your will that I shall be fully illumined, that I may better receive awareness of your presence within and around me. I believe and know that this is possible. I believe that you protect and maintain me within perfect love. I know that my eventual purpose is to express you. As I speak to you, I know that you are perfectly receptive of me, for you are universal loving intelligence, which has so marvelously designed this world and brought it into visible form. I know that as I ask you to speak to me, I am sending out a consciousness searchlight into your divine consciousness, and as I listen, you will be penetrating my human consciousness and coming ever closer to my increasingly receptive mind and heart. I commit myself and my life into your care. Each time you say and visualize this prayer, you create a spiritual consciousness form which will become stronger and ever more elevated in frequencies of vibration as the true meaning of the prayer deepens in your mind and heart and your perceptions heighten. After the prayer, relax ever deeper and let your mind go as blank as you can. If thoughts intrude, gently recite Divine Life or Father, Mother, Life to yourself, and again quiet your mind. After many months of sincere meditation, you may come to feel that your body is suddenly jerking like a person entering sleep and then suddenly waking up. If this happens, be thankful, as your consciousness is penetrating the barriers of your previously created consciousness forces, encapsulating your soul. When you feel yourself entering a different state of consciousness, so deep you are barely breathing, know that you are beginning to attain your goal. At the end of your meditation, always give glad and grateful thanks. Remember that nothing you can think, say, or do can in any way reduce all that Father, Mother, Life consciousness is. However, any disbelief will form a barrier between you and Father, Mother, Life. I want to warn you, when you are trying to still your mind and thoughts, you may feel ill at ease, physically uncomfortable, and even distressed. This is because, initially, you will come up against the black wall of your own consciousness, and this can be extremely disconcerting, even painful. Bless the experience and ask Father Life to penetrate your consciousness next time you listen. Then get up and put the experience behind you. When you find that you are at last entering into the silence, then rest equably, knowing that you have now entered what one might call the Holy of Holies, because at last you are achieving contact with Father, Mother, Life within you. It will take time for this highly spiritual experience of the silence to become a daily routine. Remember, you have a lifetime of ego baggage to discard and dissolve. No matter what you sense or are aware of during your meditation, when you come out of it, expect to sense a difference in your life. Remember that expectation is a consciousness form, and as you expect, you are opening the way for that which you expect to be magnetized into your experience, whatever it may be you are needing or dealing with. If you do not feel any new lightness of spirit, despite your sincere expectations, do not deny changes or doubt the possibility of them. Remember, your consciousness is electromagnetic, of the same substance as your physical body, and it is the foundation of all experiences in your life. Continue to expect, and as you do, so you are building up the power, the energy of your expectations, consciousness forms, which will draw to themselves the manifestation of all that you are expecting. Father, Mother, Life consciousness can only be magnetized into your individual consciousness by faith, sincere expectancy, and the willingness to open yourself to the cleansing of your magnetic, emotional, bonding rejection impulses. How many of you presently go into meditation in this way and come out expecting changes? How many lose heart when they have felt some change and then nothing for a little while? Bear in mind that I told you that you are subject to rhythms of high and low. When you are in your lows, the flow of divine life in your system has dropped, and the frequencies of vibration of your consciousness also drop. Consequently, contact with Father, Mother, Life consciousness during these times, at the beginning of your search, is almost impossible. In the early days of your seeking truth during your meditation, you are very much in touch with your subconscious, and you will find that there is an irritating resurgence of all the old negative thoughts and memories you had thought you had overcome. When you enter your highs, you will find a resurgence of your spiritual self and will rejoice in this. Your meditations will be more positive and productive of contact with Father, Mother, Life Consciousness. If you will have the courage to persist and exercise self-discipline during the low times, as well as the good, you will find eventually that the lows will get less low and any form of depression will be lifted. Remember that each time of prayerful consciousness brings you closer to your goal, although you may remain completely unaware of this. Nevertheless, things are happening for your ultimate good. Believe in them. When on earth I said, I have come to give you freedom. I have come to bring you life more abundant. The secret of your tiredness, exhaustion, inconsistency, instability, fear, despair, depression, lies in your magnetic, emotional, bonding rejection responses to life, and the subconscious patterns which sometimes take over and project you into situations you never intended to create. Because of these natural impulses of individuality, you are certainly not free. You are under the control of magnetic emotional bondage, both in your conscious and unconscious mind. You live in the grip of the ego, which has given you individuality and bound you in fetters of emotional responses to life. However, the time comes for the sincere and ardent seeker, the person who gladly follows the path of Christ consciousness, the Christ way, when he meditates and penetrates the magnetic emotional areas of the brain, to receive enlightenment which is impressed within the very topmost areas of the brain under the skull. New cells are impressed with new knowledge. This is an ongoing process, and you will probably feel this opening taking place in your brain. You now begin to operate more and more within the superconscious mind, which is in ever greater contact with Father, Mother, Life Consciousness, until the time comes when you can no longer bear the ego thoughts and feelings dominating your normal everyday consciousness, and you die the death of total self-surrender. When this happens, Father, Mother, Life Consciousness will fill your vision to the exclusion of all else. You will be entering the consciousness frequencies of what I termed on earth the kingdom of heaven. This phase will be characterized by a gradual withdrawal from the kind of life you enjoyed before. Your thought life will become ever more purified, and you will find yourself responding to situations, events, and people in a more dispassionate way. While you may be less emotionally warm or cold than before, you will now be in the first wavelengths of what you term unconditional love, and will do everything from the point of view of promoting the highest good of everyone, which means for their growth, nutrition, healing, protection, fulfillment of their legitimate needs within a system of law and order. You will love more deeply than ever before, but there will be none of the human sentiment which can cause so many errors in communication and action. When you have gained true inner knowledge, you will be able to transcend the emotional baggage. You will be able to meditate and draw upon Father, Mother, Life, and you will feel new energy entering your system, giving you new buoyancy. You will laugh, be more playful, find happiness in little things, love the world, feel brimming gratitude for every little blessing entering your life. You will find the blessings multiplying in your experience and showering your daily path. How does the person behave who has come through to freedom from the ego? Eventually, such a person is totally free of fear. There will be absolute conviction that wherever he goes, he is protected. Although he may go through potentially dangerous experiences, he will emerge unscathed. He will know that he has no need of sword or gun to protect him. He is protected against every negative eventuality wherever he is. He will fear no sickness, since he will know that every built-in device in his system to keep him healthy is fully operative and working efficiently. He will know that he will never want for the things needed to make his life happy and comfortable. Continually, he will praise and give thanks to Father, Mother, Life for all things already received and will be received in the future. He knows he will be guided to be at the right place at the right time. He also knows that he can ask for whatever is needed and the response will come swiftly. But the asking will come from his spiritually enlightened center, and he will never ask for anything selfishly, but will always pray for things within the context of what will be good for his environment, community, family, friends. He will have an open mind, knowing that truth is infinite, and while he may know much, there is always a further dimension to explore. This is what makes life in any dimension, even the celestial kingdoms of consciousness, so exhilarating and purposeful. In his daily life, the enlightened soul will wake up with a mind empty of all but praise and thanksgiving. Eventually, he will be aware of the chores awaiting him, and giving thanks for the energy and the willingness to perform these tasks. He will go away to do them without any inner resistance or reluctance to start. As a result of this attitude to daily routine, he does not waste energy on resistance in any shape or form. If there is a special reason to resist some suggestion or coercion, he will do so calmly and reasonably, without magnetic emotional feelings of annoyance or rejection. He becomes the dispassionate observer, doing the right thing at the right moment. He possesses his soul in patience, waiting for guidance, waiting for the right doors to open, waiting for confirmation that any plans are indeed divinely willed into being through his mind and heart and energy. He becomes a true man manifesting Father, Mother, Life consciousness. He also takes on the feminine characteristics of universal love and becomes the embodiment of intelligent love or loving intelligence. She takes on a more masculine characteristic of strength and strong sense of direction. If instruction is needed by a person, he or she will exhibit loving intelligence and the person will be uplifted by his or her words. If healing is needed, he or she will demonstrate intelligent love and the person will be healed. This is the goal to which I lovingly commend you. The path to Christ consciousness is outlined in these letters. When you achieve it, you will rejoice and say it was worth every moment of the rocky and bumpy times which will now be behind you forever. You will be free to climb into the higher dimensions, each one bringing you new experiences and joys. You will become founders of a new order on earth which will form the spearhead of a new surge of spiritual evolution. When this spiritual evolution spreads to the general masses in many years to come, people will finally learn how to live in peace with one another. These things will surely come to pass, for the seeds of such a future have been sown within these letters. Whoever welcomes them into their consciousness and endures in faith will eventually find them blossoming in beauty, joy, and harmony, and bringing forth fruit in their daily lives. Believe, for I, the Christ, have spoken.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, or write a comment in the comment section below. In addition, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our latest videos. Thanks for watching.